music has such a way where it's the one thing where I can make you feel something based on certain notes that I play in a certain order. So where does that line kind of fall?
But that's the reality is we do that with everything. I can make somebody feel a certain way depending on how I greet you, depending on if you have coffee, the lighting, like it's all of life is like, I feel like we have interactions with people of being like, I'm going to move you to this way, like, because I'm going to make you feel comfortable and then go. I don't think it's all bad. And I think the bigger thing too is like, where does the line of like, this is my emotions being manipulated, this is God moving in my heart.
Yeah.
Hey man, you want to talk about God?
Speaking of drummer Matt, for Bandjam episode number 2, you guys should check out drummer Matt on Instagram.
Mm-hmm.
Its tag isn't drummer Matt, but
Yet.
No, that guy won't respond to me.
Have you
could
tried?
just do, like, could you just do like drummer?
If you're watching this,
Could you do like drummer dot Matt or drummer
probably
underscore Matt?
Definitely.
Or the drummer Matt? Did you try?
Right.
Did you try any of those things?
No. I'm
drummer
a simple man.
named Matt.
I want, just super.
That's a Rolling Stone song.
A drummer named
Simple
Matt.
kind of man. No, Skinner.
A-
Be a simple
Simple
kind of man.
Okay.
That's Leonard Skinner. I think.
Honestly, I
I was
couldn't
singing
tell you.
With Arms Wide Open the other day.
Then you thought
Full
about me?
Creed.
Yes.
No, and Kate goes, "Is that Blink-182?"
I hate that.
And then I was like, "No, it's Creed." She's like, "Who's that?"
I hate that so much.
Well, good for her in a sense because she's been protected. Because she hasn't
Sure.
been, she doesn't know who Creed is.
Right.
But
Is that?
is it a protection? I think that's a hedge. Yeah.
I think you're missing out.
If you don't know Creed,
I don't know if I would say you're missing out.
You're
missing out on the band of a generation.
If there was a band that you had never listened to, like somebody you find out somebody's never listened to this band, and you would feel like the feeling, it's like if you don't listen to this band, like you've missed out, like your life is not as full of an experience because you have not listened to this band. What band would that be?
You're gonna hate this answer. So my recommendation is gonna depend on the person. If you're a beach loving kind of person and you haven't heard Zac Brown Band, then you're missing out on life.
I thought you would say the Beach Boys.
I don't listen to any music older than like 1990.
So then I would say, like, generally you're missing out on a lot.
I'm not.
You are. You have.
What would you say is a band that has single-handedly formed your
Nickelback.
taste in music?
Yeah. I would say The Who probably. The Who or the Beatles would be the two older bands, older than you are. So
couldn't tell you anything about it.
And I think the important, like the why behind that, if you like, is because that American or rock and roll in general, not American, because both of those bands are from England. It's a relatively newer kind of art form, and so much that we listen.
Old, dude.
It depends on how you describe.
Like older than my parents.
Right. And so much of what we listen to today is informed by some of the choices that Pete Townsend made as a writer, and that Lennon McCartney or any of those older guys, like that older generation, did. So I think that your experience in life isn't as full if you haven't listened to Abbey Road or Quadrophenia.
Yeah, I haven't.
And that might be judgy.
I've heard some songs, but I don't think I've ever just sat down and listened to the album.
We could have a music appreciation day together.
I would.
And so what I have to do as a
That
mature
just changed
human is I have to become willing with palms open to receive and not just say my way is the right way.
Right. Appreciate that about you.
Mm-hmm. But everything inside me is like, that's kind of BS. And like,
what?
Well, the Beatles have done more for music than Kendrick Lamar.
Oh, I'm not here to argue that or to say that they haven't, but
You're just saying you're bringing Kendrick Lamar.
Yeah.
See, I got to get off my defensive part.
Right.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Back off, dude.
I know. Yeah.
Kendrick Lamar's done more for me than the Beatles have.
Wow. Get him, Matt.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Name 5 Kendrick Lamar albums.
Albums?
Yeah.
You've got Good Kid, Mad City. You have Then you want Mr. Morale and the Big Steppers. You have, oh my goodness, you put me on the spot.
So you have 2.
I could tell you the songs that are on it, but I couldn't tell you what the album.
Could you tell me at least 2 Beatles albums?
Abbey Road, Yellow,
Yellow
Submarine,
yeah.
and Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club.
Keep going. You got more.
There's got to be a best of.
Well, yes, yeah. Revolver.
Actually,
Let It Be.
I would change my answer from Kendrick Lamar.
Okay, cool.
This is highly controversial, possibly. Kanye West, for sure.
Okay. A specific album?
Graduation, honestly.
Yeah. I think that from a hip hop standpoint, and I don't have a huge hip hop like canon, but the first album that I really got into that was straight like hip hop was probably Coloring Book by Chance the Rapper.
Mm.
And I think that was informed because I was around other people that were listening to it at the time. But I love that album.
I think that album is incredible. I think Chance has not performed up to that level since then. I mean, he wasn't able to follow it up.
It's hard.
It is.
When you have something, it's like, okay, who's the band for you? If I don't listen to this band, according to drummer Matt, my experience as a human being is not as full as it could be.
I don't know. I don't have a band. The album that came to mind was Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy.
Yep. That would be my number 2. Kanye.
If you haven't listened to that. That was the first. So Kate moved here, and I was doing trips 3.5 hours to, and then 3.5 hours back. And that album was the first album I listened to of the entire hip hop.
Which is interesting because you listened to it like 10 years after it came out.
Right. I like just found out about him.
Right. About Kanye West?
I knew who he was.
Right.
But I'd never known anything about his music or anything.
Got it.
And started with that album straight through. And since then, he's been my number 1 artist on Spotify the last 2 years before the last one.
What was last year?
Kendrick Lamar.
Wow.
Really?
We didn't even plan that.
I mean, I'm missing something clearly. So
Matt's a much better musician than you two. So maybe you need to open up, like broaden your scope, which is why we started this conversation.
Yeah.
About how good of a musician drummer Matt is.
Yeah.
And his Instagram.
Right. Those who can't do, teach. And those who can't teach Jim.
Yes. One of my favorite movies of all time.
Oh, great. Have you ever seen School of Rock?
Of course.
Okay. I don't know.
Come on,
man.
Come on.
You were 3.
No.
You
2004?
Yeah.
It's not
5.
3.
5.
No. I was 8.
Really?
Yeah.
96?
Mm-hmm.
A lot of good things came out in 96. What else happened in 1996?
Me?
The only thing.
I'm the only thing that came out in 1996.
It's still here. It's still relevant. Yeah.
I honestly couldn't tell you what else happened in 1996. I turned 5. Started kindergarten.
I was in 4th grade.
Yep. Old.
11sies.
Cory graduated college in 1996.
That's a good one. Thumbs up.
So we were, but you brought up the reels.
Yes.
Because drummer Matt's, I feel like you're just becoming, we were talking about it and you're like becoming a little bit more, I feel like, active with posting some stuff about you drumming. I don't know if you've ever done that before.
Right.
But
so
I feel
like you're taking videos of yourself playing at church and then they're good.
And the one today, I think you reshared it, was kind of cool because it like it wasn't just like, this is me covering the song, but you were kind of breaking down like your thought process of how I think you would, I guess, communicate to another drummer to go through that, which is very cool because I feel like I'm not, when I look at like YouTube videos and stuff, and I remember the days when it was like you bought a book with tabs, which we all learn so differently too. It's like that was just one, like, so they limited kind of like your learning to
anything older than 1990.
When tabs were, but like I feel like there's a lot of resources now where you go through it and like guitar players talk about like this is how like the best way to play rhythm guitar for a worship band or whatever, and like kind of playing diamonds and like a blah, blah, blah. But I don't see a lot of stuff talking drummers through it.
No, I don't. I mean, there are a few worship drummers that are kind of doing that same idea. For me, it was hard. I can post a bunch of stuff of me playing drums, and like anybody can play drums, or like, anybody can post a video of them doing something drums. Cool.
Sure.
But what kind of value does that actually bring?
That's a good question.
And I've been asked. I felt like I could be in more of a mentoring role for people, and so it's like, how do I take the things that are going on in my head that kind of happen naturally and explain those things?
So like your post was about like dynamics and building and how to
extended builds,
use space and all these different kinds of things, right? Like when you're playing, like are all those things like going through your mind, or is it just a natural thing and you're watching back and then you're like writing out how you do it?
I just do it.
Were you like taught that way, or like where did that? Because I feel like that's something that I would say as a non-musician, but as like the sound guy in the back, the dynamics is something that a lot of musicians, particularly newer musicians, struggle with, of trying to figure that out, right? Of how to do it the best. So like, does that just come from you've played for years? Were you taught in a certain way? Like,
yeah, I think it just comes from playing. And I've kind of always had a skill. I've done a lot of writing, which I think lends itself to some of that spontaneity and feel, where you listen to enough worship music, kind of the things, they're all structured very similarly. Probably agree with that. And so if I know where something's going 4 measures ahead of time, I can plan out without really thinking about it. And so it's just this library of
idea. What if Bandjam episode 3, whenever it comes out, is the 3 of us write a worship song and like do it and like record like writing a worship song? Because you've done it.
Yeah.
You've done it. Like, I can be creative with words.
We can try it. We need a vocalist.
No, we don't have to like actually play it. I can auto-tune myself.
We just have to say that we did it, and we can vouch that it's good.
Right. Maybe we could get somebody else to sing it. But like, we just go through the process of writing it like in an episode. Yeah.
We could probably set up a room with some cameras and just say we're going to hit record and go through and just do like a time lapse of like get through. That'd be interesting. I feel like it's been a long time since I've written a song.
That could be a fun thing.
Maybe we should do that for our free time.
Sarasulo on?
Yeah.
That could be a really fun thing to talk through worship and then also write a song.
Yeah.
And talk about what we did and why.
Yeah.
So do you have the same kind of, sorry, not to stay on the topic, but switch. When you have the ability, so you don't think about these things, like the songs as you go in, and we're going to be 4 measures ahead, and you also know when we're going into one of the songs, like we're probably going to be in this section for about 4 minutes. So like you watch it back. I guess live you do it just by feel. You watch it back and then you talk through. It's like, oh, these were actually the choices I was making. Do you have the same filter when you watch a stream? Like, or listen to something towards like, do you look at the guitars and listen back and say, oh, they should have or could have done this, they should have held back here, I wish they would have been like more kind of doing the same thing like on the wave that you were at? Or do you like,
no, I don't think so. It's funny, I don't think I've ever
thought about
no, I don't think I've ever thought about what anybody else is doing. Like,
yeah, I do a lot. Going back to
I'm kind of following.
See, that's interesting because I don't look at when I play with you. I feel like I am trying to follow you.
Listen,
and trying to wait. Like,
listen, this is biblical.
Yeah,
okay? This is biblical. You're being a servant, and you're trying to be a servant.
But not being a servant.
Right, by following his lead, and he's following everybody else's lead, and we're all coming together, and it's
yeah. And I think that too is like the sound or the thing only like kind of like the scripture, Matthew. I don't
Give
know,
it to me.
where two or more are gathered, two or three are gathered, that he is there. I think like in a band, at a certain point, especially like the other week we played and we had very few tonal instruments. Is drummer Matt, I was on guitar. Joe was playing bass and leading worship, and then Lisa on keys.
Yes.
So in that spot, I feel like I'm looking around to either Lisa at times to see what she's doing melodically with the piano, or I'm very much just following him. Joe's kind of his own other world because he's doing the vocal thing. So it's hard to connect with him. But I'm thinking like in my head, I'm like, if two of us get on the same page, the other one can follow that.
Definitely.
So but I'm like always looking for that connection.
I think that's so interesting to hear you talk about that, because that's also so weird to me, because like I was mixing sound and the first song that we played was That's the Power.
Yeah.
Which has a very strong lead guitar part, particularly like throughout the whole thing, but particularly for the first verse. Like that's what you hear, and you were playing that.
Yeah.
And you played it great.
Well, you gave me some good feedback.
You just had like crazy delay on or something.
Yeah. I don't know why I had a .8 delay on and that thing. And I was like, that is the actual thing that I just need to do is remove the delay. Just do it's a very like basic guitar part, like going through it, but it just needs to kind of sing through and not have like, little ripples of those sounds.
Man, I would be very interested actually for both of you to read The Creative Act, A Way of Being by Rick Rubin.
Ooh, I have an Audible credit.
Because
I'm going to do it right now.
Doesn't count.
Stop.
Rick Rubin has produced for every artist under the sun, every genre under the sun.
It's really incredible.
And if you like watch videos or anything of how he produces and how he helps to make this music that he's making, like he's telling people what they should do. Like he's not, oh, what do you want to do? How do you, like he's like, do this. This is what's going to sound best. You do this. This is what's going to sound best. This lyric over here. Let's change this. Boom. And he goes and he does it. And the book is very like, I would call this book, it's like scatterbrained. Like it's all over the place, but I imagine it's exactly how his brain actually works. Like it's just all over the place. And he takes bits and pieces as he needs it.
Yeah. And from what I've seen from him too, and like there was a really cool, not to just rehash the Beatles, but documentary he did with Paul McCartney, and they're going through and they're listening to tracks, and they got their big board, and randomly as they're listening to the song, they're pulling certain tracks down. So he said, like, listen to what your bass is doing here, and he'll pull everything out but just the bass or the guitar, and he's just in the moment, just being like, and he is hearing things that. Like he can isolate something so well, but I think that's probably what he does. That's his superpower,
right? Of
going in and not having a plan,
right?
But just being able to identify in the moment, like what is,
which is what was cool about your reel, to bring us all the way back, right? Of you were breaking things down, of the snare offbeat, and then you switched up the kick, what you were doing to follow the melody, like as you were building, like you were isolating things in that video that I think. If I was a drummer, I think I'd find it helpful.
I mean, just as a musician, I thought it was cool.
Right.
Looking at it, because it's just like saying, like, this is what he's like just doing. Right. But in the moment, it's so great because, like, I also thought, because I was on the other side of the stage and there was nobody else over there, it's like, I wish if I could just move the whole way down to be right next to the cage. But then my whole thing, because I already got like the power stance thing going. But I would have just been like full frontal on Matt the whole time. It's like,
yes,
been great.
Not to change subject, but you brought up the Beatles. Did you see that they're putting out a song at the end of the year that's like their last finished song, and they did John Lennon's vocals as AI. They used AI to generate his vocals.
Really? That's wild.
It's like the last,
I
guess.
I mean,
but
yeah. So it would just be Paul and Ringo are putting something like a track that they started to record, and
I was really hoping.
I don't know how you feel about the whole AI as a vocal thing.
I love it.
Yeah, it's like I feel like this is the next generation or the next iteration of like they would do like the holograms of like Tupac or whatever.
Yeah, I love it.
But it's not really John.
So
it's an actor portraying John, which is still cool. Like, but it's not John. Like, that's not the last.
I mean, Tom Cruise isn't really Ethan Hawke. Mission Impossible.
Yeah, but Ethan Hawke. But no,
Robert Downey Jr. isn't really Iron Man, but he is. It's the same thing.
I don't think
it's entertainment.
So. No, because Iron Man never really existed
that you know of.
Yeah.
So it's the last Beatles song. They use source material from a demo recording that Lennon made before his death in 1980. The quote is, "We were able to take John's voice and get it pure through this AI so that we could mix the record as you would normally do. So it gives you some sort of leeway. So it's an isolation thing.
He sang like
he
the
did,
demo,
okay,
and then
so
they use that to kind of produce it.
It's an interesting usage of it.
Wow. Where technology is taking us.
I think it's coming. Might as well accept it.
Do you think, I mean, for sure, there's no fighting it. But like, do you think that there will be a higher premium than on like human created?
Yes.
It'll be like made in America, but it'll be like human created song. And that'll mean something to us. Well, it'll be artisanal.
It's like how much of pop songs right now are even written by the person that sings it to begin with?
None of them.
Like,
well,
you're just adding kind of another. Some of it, like
Benny Blanco and Charlie Puth write every pop song ever, essentially. And then Rick Rubin produces them.
Charlie, what's the list of songs that Charlie Puth has written that are like
Charlie Puth? Like, he did "See You Again" from Fast and Furious 7 with Wiz Khalifa.
Again, so nobody besides you.
He's the guy who like he has perfect pitch. So he goes around. I know.
Yeah.
But he has a lot of writing credits.
Really? I mean, that's not a bad thing. But again, those are still there is a difference because there's a human writing these songs. They're being performed by other humans. What's going to happen though is like, and this is why there's a writer's strike in like Hollywood right now, because it's so at a point, I guess, like where's the value? It's like at least it's a human. If it's an AI doing it, like who?
I would say, here's what I would say particularly about songs, right? If you look at pop songs that they go to number one, they blow up. I don't listen to a ton of them, to be completely honest with you, but I know they're out there.
They exist. Yeah. There are number one hits.
They all follow the same formula already. And they are all using
that the Beatles created.
Basically the same 6 chords. Ed Sheeran did a interview where he was like, here are 4 chords. I can play any song in existence with these 4 chords, which you can change it a little bit. But I think that music writing in particular is very, very, very formulaic already. And so now using technology to do that instead of humans, I don't think it's any different because the humans were already following the formula. You're just giving that formula to a computer. And I think that is why when people come out with things that sound different, which is what I would say Kanye does, which is what I would say Kendrick Lamar does. Who's the other guy? Kid Cudi. Like those artists who come out with things that sound so different and they don't follow the mainstream, like this is what it's supposed to sound like. This is where it's supposed to build. And that's why they do well. So I do think there's going to be a premium there, but
yeah. But I think that's always existed with music. Like if you look at every change that's happened generationally, like it's people that took a thing that existed and just bent it a different way or put a different
like.
I
mean, how many worship songs are being written right now that are not just an Elevation or a Maverick City with different lyrics?
Right.
That's all they are.
Yeah. But the thing was, though, is like Elevation, and I would say Maverick City too, was like that was its own kind of like flip because nothing sounded like mainstream, like an Elevation worship song. I remember sitting in a meeting years ago with like all of the people like in the worship team at a church, and this is before Maverick City, but a band called, or a ministry or church, whatever, House Fires existed, that was doing a lot of this stuff. Like we're going to record with acoustic instruments and a piano in a room with a bunch of people. And they put up YouTube videos and go through. And I was sitting there and we were talking about like, as we were kind of evolving the sound of like our team. And it was kind of blown. I was like, we're not going to be like a House Fires. We're not doing like this kind of thing. We're scaling it like not acoustic or whatever. And I remember being like, I love House Fires. They're great. And then it's funny, 1.5 years, 2 years later, there's a huge shift that happens. And now it feels like everybody's just doing the Maverick City kind of thing. But it's like, that was not normal 5 years ago. Mm-hmm. And even the Elevation thing was like, it was all like, it's
There's
always a wave.
Years and years ago, it was Hillsong, and then when Mosaic came out with Tremble,
dude,
it was all over it. And
banger.
Then when Hillsong came out with Oceans, there were a gajillion Oceans copies that came out. Like when Real Love came out by Young and Free, there were a gajillion copies of Real Love. Like it does follow. So what I'm like, we're just illustrating even more that like music is already so formulaic, so much of just take what's popular, make a different copy of it until somebody steps out and makes something that sounds different.
Yeah.
Then it blows up, and then everybody's just copying that. So why not have AI do it?
Because again, it's not like a question of why not have AI do it or versus a human do it, but like what will be the next like drummer Matt, best musician in the room?
Yeah, absolutely.
I don't know if you have the best taste.
I would say
or knowledge, but no. Like, what do you like? Or this could be for all of us. Hypothetically, what could be the next move? Like, where do you see the next shift in worship?
It's a great music. Question. I don't know. Everything's a rehash of something that's already been done. Yep. So you look at everything's kind of gone in waves. And as far as pop music goes, what I've listened to, we've gone through kind of the 80s resurgence a while ago, like maybe 2014, 2015. There was a 90s resurgence within the last 5 years. So I don't know where you go from here because you're not doing like early 2000s, but I don't know.
I would love, and I think some people have tried to bring a little pop punk back.
It's coming back, dude.
Well, in the main thing, but like a little bit of in the worship thing. Like Fake Love was great, dude. I love that song.
I think
everybody hated it.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's coming back next, but I do think
not for a church service, but
right
for regular music. I think punk.
I think that so I look at the song Old Church Basement. Okay.
One of your favorite songs.
It is Maverick City Elevation, and I relate that song as a new take on like older hymns, and I think that could come back around. I mean, if you look at in the movie industry right now, that I've read things of where like basically no studio wants to make original movies right now. They're just, what sequels can we make? What 2 or 3 or 4, like just rehashing old content. And with worship music in particular, I think that you can go back and you can look at hymns. Like I think of like, but like hymns is also like, even, is it Cody Carnes or Brandon Lake that put the line from Better Is One Day into one of their songs? You know what I'm talking about? It's on Elevation, right?
Yeah.
It was Brandon Lake then.
Him or Chris Brown. But like one of the songs they came into there,
like they took the line from Better Is One Day and put it into the song.
But I feel like that's what I think Maverick City actually started. When you listen to their first, like like with just Dante and like, or I don't even know if Dante was on a ton of that album. Like it was all very stripped down, but they're just bringing older hymns because all that stuff is open source. Like kind of like you can use it into the context of their melodies or their songs now.
I think you also have to look at the church world as a whole, because we talked about it with Jason on the episode of like the seeker friendly movement, right? And that was where like everything was done to a T. Like this song is 3 minutes and 13 seconds long, and it cannot go longer than 3 minutes and 13 seconds, right?
The track will stop.
Right. And like you're out of service in an hour and 10 minutes max, like so on and so forth, right? And then the trend right now, which Maverick City does phenomenally, is the like free range flow. We don't really, I mean, what it's either More Than Able or Make a Way on their new album. The song ends and the Spotify song goes on for another 4.5 minutes.
Yeah.
And like it could be a completely different song. Yeah. But that is what, so will the trend go back to not as free flowing and more, or will it continue to like a 4-minute song turns into an 8-minute song and then it turns into a 16-minute song?
Yeah. Like, but I think more than anything, you look at like what like, and this is like a bigger question, is like, what are people looking for when they go into a faith-based or a church experience? And I think that church has been for the last like 10 years or so packaged so nicely for us in the effort to be more approachable, the seeker-friendly movement. And I think there's been a shift in this generation of people that are probably in their 30s now that are kind of leading this idea of I don't want to say this, like not necessarily looking for just the cookie cutter experience, but to be in a room where it feels like things are possible.
Yeah.
And it can go a certain way. And I think there's a balance, because I think sometimes if we just swing too far, it's like we end up with 3-hour services that may be touching a couple people, but then there's inevitably other people that are going to be like, oh, I gotta go get the kids. I gotta go do a nap or whatever. But I think ultimately is like, I think worship music will always go to this idea of like, what are people hungry for? And I think right now we're seeing the spot is like, there's a lot more of a flow to the worship experience, because I think people are looking for, it's not just turn it on and have a dance song, but it's to be kind of like taking on this like journey. And like for a lot of us, like we're unpacking our whole week on a Sunday. Right. I'm not saying that's the healthiest place to be, but that might be where we're at. And so there's like a progression, and we need like some room and some space to kind of feel, because there's always energy in the room too.
Well, it's super interesting.
And these songs now will allow the worship leader or whoever's running service to kind of feel that energy and go there. Sorry.
No, it's super interesting, because you have to, we're talking about this worship base, but like, I think there's also a massive, massive change happening in churches across particularly in the US, of where there are a lot of churches who they came out of the Jesus movement, of where the senior pastors, the founding pastors, whatever, who are still in their 60s today, leading a church, right? Of where those churches are starting to transition. Like they have been for several years, but like a lot of them are transitioning right now, or trying to.
Hopefully, yeah.
Right?
Yep.
And so it's also this big change of, I mean, there's a generational shift in who is running the church.
Yeah.
And it's very interesting to watch somebody, late 30s, early 40s, like they're taking over a church, that the people who are running it now, this is the same thing as them taking it over in the late 90s, early 2000s.
Yeah. And you brought it up too, Matt, like you said about like this idea of like, in Proverbs talks about there's nothing new under the sun. Like it's all rehashing. And when I think of like, let's talk about like our local church that we go to that had a leadership change over the last 5 years. And so our current pastor, although saw peripherally the kind of 80s movement and how church was done through the 80s and 90s, and then had a package version, not in a bad way, but like just that we kind of like has been used from 2007 on. Yeah. And now he's kind of going, is he looking back and being like, I'm going back to the older thing. Like we're always going, but like doing it in a new or a different way and with different resources. Most of the people that were doing these like longer flowing, like flowy services back in the day were just like a piano. So now we have like a full band, lots of resources, LED walls and stuff, which are all cool, but we're bringing back a little bit more of like less structured itinerary to Sunday with all the same resources and just providing. So it's just like amplifying that experience a little different.
It's been interesting because there used to be such a focus on putting on a show, and you're in your face with electric guitars. And like, I think of when we were talking about it earlier, I was like, if we could go back to like Live in Miami Hillsong, like Mighty to Save, if we could go back to that, like that would be fantastic. But then I think about where have we gone since then. Now you can do a lot of the music, any Maverick City song, as long as you have an acoustic, half of a drum set and a piano player, you can do any of it. And there's less of a focus on let's put on a show and let's be in your face with all of this stuff, and let's actually like take it back to the root.
Yeah, because you can always add on it too. One of the the Firm Foundation by Cody Carnes and like there's tons of versions of it. And we started with the kind of traditional Chandler Moore, Cody Carnes version, and then that evolved to like I don't know who does the version that we're playing now, but it has more like lead lines on electric guitar. And it's like if the core of it can be done
right
with a piano, an acoustic guitar, small drum, like small rhythm section, and a good leader out front that's kind of like flowing, and you can always add to it, and then that just leads for different expressions of,
right.
You know,
I mean, at the end of the day, it's just like any other industry. Is that the church will go to where the people are at, right? And so what that means is that 5-10 years ago, people wanted to come to church for a show, and they 10 years ago, people wanted the church service to go 1 hour and 10 minutes exactly, and never ever ever go over.
Yeah,
and like the fastest growing churches in America or whatever in the world, whatever, like they align themselves with certain principles, right? And then there are shifts that happen, and I don't know exactly why they happen, whether it's like this generational thing, whether it's whatever it could be, whether it's like scales get too tipped in one direction, like things are so strict that like we bounce outside of that for one service and we're like, oh, that was kind of nice, like let's do it again, and then it just keeps happening until now you have a 3-hour service, right? But like, where do those shifts happen? How do they happen? And you still have to look at what the people want and where the people are, like, and that's what drives everything,
right?
If there was a church that came out right now that, you know, they took on the growth of some of these other churches, like VU. I mean, VU just had VU conference. Like, if you look at a church like VU and they start doing something differently, where they're like hour and 5 minutes, 2 worship songs, 50-minute message, and they keep growing like they're growing, every church in America will switch to that. They will, because who is involved?
Whether that's right or wrong is a different thing.
Yep. I mean, not every church will, but the churches.
And I feel like our course corrections that I see, like the pendulum swings so far.
I think it was. I don't feel like it does, though.
Really?
If you look at Amplify, it has been a 4-year transition that got sped up because we went to the Hillman Center. Because we had to move out of an old building, and the new building wasn't ready, and so we went to this Hillman Center where every set was an acoustic set, and like there were several Sundays where like the only drum we had was a floor tom.
Yeah,
but those services were incredible.
Yeah,
but the transition from, I think that the transition from super on time and on point over a year or two went up really high, and there were 2.5 hour 3 services, and now there's like stabilization of every service. When we get to 90 minutes, hey, we've been here for 90 minutes. If you got to go. If you want to go get your kids, go. Like, but we're gonna stay here in this moment. You know,
there's an option.
Correct.
To stay,
but it's like a stabilization kind of thing
until we hit the track and
right.
Right. So something that I've had a realization of in the last few years, I remember my brother was listening to Bethel, and they were doing a lot of spontaneous, and it was the first. I came from a church that was like, we opened with a secular song every weekend. We did 5 services a weekend, and like we did that. We did the whole structure thing. So spontaneity was something that was brand new to me. And I remember making fun of him. I was like, all they're doing is playing between 70 and 75 BPM. They're repeating bridges over and over again. They're elongating melodies, and you're manipulating people into thinking that they're feeling something that maybe they aren't. And this was, I saw a tweet that was like, when I was a kid, I went to church camp and I fell in love with Jesus, but it turned out I just like live music.
That's so
cute. Jeez.
And so my thought was, so I had this like, and it can be used in a manipulative way. I since then have, I don't believe that anymore, but I do think that there's a line where you can get into manipulation, and music has such a way where it's the one thing where I can make you feel something based on certain notes that I play in a certain order, and you're going to like, so where does that line kind of fall?
But that's the reality is we do that with everything. I can make somebody feel a certain way depending on how I greet you, depending on if we have coffee, the lighting, like it's all of life is like, I feel like we have interactions with people of being like, I'm going to move you to this way, like, because I'm going to make you feel comfortable and then go. I don't think it's all bad. And I think the bigger thing too is like, where does the line of like, this is my emotions being manipulated, this is God moving in my heart?
Yeah.
Could we define being manipulated? Like not actually, but like in that
I want to have
that was the fastest you was going to look up anything as a producer.
No, I mean like in that kind of thing of like we're manipulating people, or like what does that mean?
I have a great story from a junior high camp I went to.
Let's go.
So I have sensed every camp does this. It's like Wednesday night, you've been there for a few days, and then bam, you got midnight worship service. They came around, told everybody there was a gas leak. We've got to go. We didn't know this was coming. They were like, we've got to go. So everybody's like on edge. Everybody's freaking out. None of our parents are obviously there. So we're like 12. And we go in and they're playing How He Loves, and people are crying, and they do this big visual where they like either like you write your sins and you put them on the cross or something. And you're just like broken down, and you're in a feeling of like, I would say that we were in that moment sort of made to feel that emotion. And manipulation to me is I'm making you feel.
So it was manufactured.
Yeah.
It wasn't.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, but there's also like, I think that, is there a difference? I don't say there is, but is there? It's a question. So adults making kids feel like there's a gas leak, or I think we used to do like did
they say when everybody got in the room that like, oh, we were just kidding?
I think so, like probably.
Yeah.
Because like if they let it on and we're like, praise Jesus, the gas leak is okay.
No, it wasn't that.
Right.
It was.
Like,
it
definitely
wasn't that.
Yeah. I think that moving our emotions and people doing that, because music does that, and lights do that, and sound does that. I don't think that's inherently like a thing that you say is like that's not a bad thing.
It's not. I think that one of the key things there is the lights, the music, all that kind of stuff. Yes, 100%. But one of the biggest things that does that for me, at least, is the other people in the room, and that community of people around you, of where, you know, I don't know if I've said this before on this podcast or not, but it's like we did, because we've talked about it, but it takes one person in a front row to raise their hands to basically give the rest of the church permission to like actually go into that.
And a lot of those people, some of those people are like looking for the permission.
Correct. Like, and so I think manufactured, we can talk about that all day long. I think that even when like I think about what you were saying about back in the day, where you don't believe this anymore, but when you would hear Bethel do those things, which now everyone's doing, right? What like why did the word manipulative come to your mind? Like what about it made you think that?
To me, you almost didn't have a choice but to feel, and it's made to make you feel, I want to say vulnerable, but like it's made you hear it, and it kind of evokes a response of kind of start thinking inwardly, and maybe you get sad, and it's made to do that. And I think then I thought it was like, this is such a bad thing because you're making people do that, but is it?
Yeah,
you know, it's just music. Like that's how music works.
Right. And I would say like all art is created to do that. A painting that gets you is created to make you question. So we take this idea of like emotions and questions and things that art drives us to do, and thoughts of things we don't understand. Like that's the purpose of it. And that's David. That's the Psalms. That's always like, that's the point of the artist.
Mm-hmm.
And the situation sometimes is to give us an opportunity to. Now, can that be taken too far? And it's like, maybe it's like, but you have to look at the motive of each person and the institution that's doing it.
Yeah.
And scripture says a tree is known by its fruit. So you always step back and can look at it and like zoom out and say like, what's the fruit of that in the lives of these people, and then judge it. And then as an adult, you can choose whether you participate in that or not.
Right.
Yeah.
As an adult now, I can step in, and why I do love, I think music moves me in a way that nothing else does. So, and written word can move me. And I'm at a point where it's like, I can choose to kind of put myself in those situations and be vulnerable enough to say like, hey, I'm putting myself in a spot because I want to be moved.
Yeah.
Like that's a choice now. And it's hard, I think, as as a kid in the situation. Like we've probably all been in those spots where it's like, man, it's like, I feel like that's where manipulation, I think, becomes, and it does happen to adults too. But I think as an adult now, it's like, I can recognize and say like, I believe God is creative. I think all creative works that are good to us because they make us question something or think about something differently.
Yeah.
In a world that everything is being rehashed. Somebody does something different that makes me look at it. I think that's a good thing.
I was going to say the same thing as you. I was just going to phrase it as, it depends on the culture of the organizations, but like the church or whatever it is, because, you know, this may be just semantics, but you were like, it just makes people sad and it's trying to make them sad. Right. Well, if that is the purpose, then I think that's kind of messed up.
Emotional is probably the better word.
Right. And so even what does emotional mean? Like if you are being vulnerable, but you're coming out of that moment feeling empowered and feeling uplifted and feeling like,
or honest. And like you just felt the hurt that you had.
Right.
You
don't
like
have to
feel
process it.
Like, you're like, whoa, it's like that actually exists in me. I got to deal with this thing now, or I'm aware of it. And like, I've never even was able to acknowledge it, but like these chords and these lyrics or that message brought it out of me, then that's okay.
I thought I just had, it's the cool, I've never thought of it this way before, but like, obviously God created music.
Correct.
And wired us to feel that way. And like, how cool is it that it does invoke that response, and that those certain sequences of notes do that thing to a person naturally.
Yeah.
Right.
How cool is that?
Because there's only so many. And that's what we all kind of like, where we started this conversation, even talking about like how things have changed. It's like music is formulaic. It's the same things over and over and over again, but done by a different person or a different time and a different, like each one of them still has the power to like.
That is where the manufactured feeling comes in. Because, for instance, Chandler Moore, Naomi Rain, free-flowing, off-the-cuff worship. They are professionals at it, right? The manufactured part, in my opinion, comes in where somebody does that from a stage, but it doesn't feel natural at all. And it's like, oh, I heard somebody like Chandler Moore do this, so I'm going to try to do it too.
Well, yeah.
And then it becomes manufactured and does not carry
when all of our spontaneous moments in a spontaneous song sound exactly what was recorded by Bethel or Naomi Raines. Like we say the exact same lines every time in between the verse. I'm like, ugh.
Right. I think that's where it becomes manufactured, is I think that you get to a place of where somebody really wants to be that and really wants to do that and really wants to create that, like,
or has that gift.
Right. But maybe they don't have the experience yet. Or they're like, I don't know. I think that's where I think the people in it can manufacture it who listen to what's popular and don't necessarily flow in that same style. I think that can be really hard.
Music's cool. I love
music. Is cool.
It's so cool.
I appreciate the honesty of like sharing that, of like that's where you were and that's how you saw it. And I do think like that's like, those are real questions. Like you say like, hey, Like you're doing all these things to just move me in this direction.
Yeah.
And if I don't believe in my heart that that's a positive direction, then I would be like, no, I'm out.
You want to know what's crazy is the church that I went to growing up. So my dad ran sound. I'm not going to say the name of the church or anything because I'm going to kind of roast him, but my dad ran sound and I would come with him and help. And we had to go every Sunday at like 5:30 in the morning because the stage was torn down every day. The only thing that wasn't moved was the literal grand piano and the drum kit. But they didn't use ears, anything like that. So we had to run
floor monitors,
floor monitors.
Yeah.
We had everything was wired mics. So you had to hook them up and run them and then go back to the soundboard.
Analog.
And it was the like Lion of Judah, Better's One Day, Prince of Peace kind of songs. And the other day I was just curious and I went and looked that church up and they do live streams. And I watched part of
we should make content
the live stream from that church. And it was the exact same thing that they were doing 23 years ago. They line up all their the front line is like 2 or 3 people. They have music stands in front of them with the lyrics and all the stuff set up. They still have the floor monitors. They still have it's the exact same setup, still playing the same songs 25 years later. And that blows my mind.
Yeah. I think it does.
That people don't adjust or change anything.
But I think there's also too like the real like one of the cool things is like that I think churches exist in every community. Gatherings of faith exist in every community. And in some ways I'm like look at that and be like, how could you not move past it?
Right.
But at the same sense too, and I don't maybe this is just me justifying it from my experience too, but it's like if those same 50, 60, 100 people keep coming and it's like that's their community and they're healthy, and I can't answer that question. It's like, but that's just what they like, that's how they have their practice. Good for you. I'm not going to judge your practice, really.
Right.
Are you hurting somebody? Then I like say, yeah,
right.
Certain churches.
Right.
But like whether you do it and you want to be like, what's your plan for growth? What are you like? I don't know. I think that like now it's about like it can be good for you, but thankfully like I'm an adult now, so I can choose whether it's good for me or not.
Right.
I choose what's healthy for me and for my family, or not. And I think that I would, in the same way, I have other churches that I look at that I've come up with, and I look at them as like, I wish there was more. Yeah. And I almost feel like, is it sad that there's not? It's like, but honestly, it's like, maybe not. Maybe that's just what you're doing. And if that gives your community peace, like, is that good enough? I think it's also crazy for me just because I think of 25 years ago, I was 6. Mm-hmm. And so much has changed in my life. Right. Since I was like a small child. Like everything as it has should. Changed, right? And so to look back at something from like my past and still see it, that's where it's like I'm like blown away because like I've gone through all these different stages. But this is like, and some people may love that because it's like this certainty, like this foundation. The people that did that, they were your age now when they built it, which is crazy. Which, you know what I mean? Like, and they've said like, this is why some people I feel like growing up meant like that you evolve in your style, you change until you find something. And you're like, this was me. You're like, Christ, like at 33, and this is how I'll be for the rest of my life. Right. And like, either I will wear the same kind of jeans, you know, and do whatever. Like, this is what you just became comfortable with, and you just stuck with it. I hope and pray that Kingdom Empowered, Empower the Kingdom, Ordinary Believers is still around 20, 30 years from now. And looks nothing like it does today. But looks nothing at all like it looks today. I don't want to stay the same. Yeah. I think evolving is good. I think it's healthy. Man, what you got over there? I feel like you got something. We stopped discovering new music at age 30. The survey suggests. That's probably why you're still stuck on the Beatles because you were listening to them growing up. No, I have a fondness for that music for sure. For sure. I listen to new music.
Like who?
Like Maverick City's.
Okay.
Trying to think of
this hot new band, Limp Bizkit, just came out.
they're horrible. Also, there's what they covered, Behind Blue Eyes, blew up in the early 2000s. That's a song by The Who. So
I'm sorry, I just had to get one shot out there, but that was interesting. I thought it was after 30, you stop looking for new music. Generally,
I started listening to Laney after I was 30. I think that was new.
So good.
Right.
The band Camino.
Oh, so good.
Right. 1975, or did you not? You did make that jump.
I like the 1975s.
Okay.
Yeah.
1975s.
There's only one.
It's 1975.
The 1975.
Yeah.
That was a choice.
You didn't really listen to them.
Yeah. Well, what else?
Well, I do want people to know that if you're still here, every Bandjam episode won't just actually be talking about music. Like it happened this time, and it's been fun.
Yeah.
But every time won't just be about
I think,
music.
but every time what it is like that we just come in, we just like
right. We're just sitting
talk
here
about
talking.
wherever and go.
We had a topic.
We had a topic.
Right.
No,
This is, but like
But I
that's
love
what
that.
makes
I
it
love
so
that.
much
I love
better.
that.
It's
Yeah.
like this is actually a conversation that like the three of us would just sit here and have. There would probably be more roasting of each other, Cory and how old he is, but overall, like this is a real conversation.
Yeah, that was good. Ordinary people.
Do you feel old?
Do I
It's
feel
not
old?
ordinary people.
No,
it's ordinary
I'm saying.
believers.
I said we're ordinary people. I knew you were going to do that. I played it into you. I fell for it. The podcast name is Ordinary Believers.
People.
But we are ordinary people.
Got it.
Having a conversation.
It's funny because he's older, but you have much more salt going on.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you might be bald before any of us.
True. I think you do have the deepest hairline.
Dude, that's why I'm growing it out now.
And I
it's
have an
literally like a
amazingly
last
large
hurrah.
forehead.
Yes.
So to have Matt around is like, whoo.
Yeah.
Right. Makes you feel a little bit better about
Yeah.
yourself.
And
That's
I'm 11 years older than you, but that's okay.
Mhm.
It's not a.
11 years wiser.
Now we're talking.
I don't know if I would actually say you're 11 years wiser than Matt.
Maybe 25, 30.
I'm gonna go like two or three maybe.
I think Matt's got a lot of wisdom.
Right.
Oh.
He's from Ohio, so he had to deal with a lot growing up.
Mhm.
Yes.
So he
yes.
he worked through that, learned through
Yes.
that.
He's had a lot of
corn ran
experiences.
dry.
Right. What happened?
I don't know. We didn't.
Well, are we ending it here?
Let's
That's
end it
it?
here. I think that's it. I feel good.
I feel
I
like
don't know.
my head is congested with 1,000 bees
Yeah.
just zooming around in there.
Well, luckily we maintained 6 feet of separation,
Right.
and
COVID rules.
You know, the night's done. We're done, so we don't have to do anything else. We're
Right.
good.
That is the
Fucking-
plus.
It's
That's
a
the
blessing.
plus.
It's good.
No, we're recording another one after this. So,
Remote.
appreciate you guys. Bandjam. If anyone sees this, if anyone hears this, if anyone listens to the full episode, let's not clip this in. Let's not put this as a reel. If anyone hears here, I need you to leave a comment of who's better, Kanye West or the Beatles. Okay, love
And
you.
also message at drummer Matt. Tell him to give up his handle.
True.
Yes.
True.
Also,
Dude, if we could,
we started a new Instagram page.
yep, Ordinary
for
Believers
this podcast, Ordinary Believers.
We should probably should have said that at the beginning.
Let's like that page and
Right.
We should probably do like an intro
follow
and cut it
for
to the
content that's
beginning.
just related to this podcast
Right.
and the conversations that we're having.
Matt, he was doing an intro and you just cut him off.
Oh, do it again.
No.
No, I can't. No, it's
Oh.
over. That would be manufactured. That would be
Right.
emotional manipulation.
We're not about
And we're not in that
Manipulation.
business. Manipulation.
manipulation.
Love you, man.
Love you.
Go ahead.
Love you, everybody.
Good job.